November 25, 1999, Jerusalem. The rumble of heavy machinery shatters the vibrant hum of the old city as excavators rip through the surface of the Temple Mount. Commissioned by the Islamic Authority in Jerusalem, they dig a massive crater. In under 3 days, irreparable damage is done. Roughly 9,000 tons of soil are removed without archaeological supervision, leaving behind a 350 truckload mountain of debris dumped into the Kidron Valley. However, 2 archaeologists, Gabriel Barkay and Zaki Dvira, understood the historical significance of this mound. In 2004, they launched the Temple Mount Sifting Project, enlisting professionals, volunteers, and even tourists to help sift through the literal tons of earth. Among the countless artifacts unearthed were these curious stone tiles, pieces of a Roman flooring technique called Opus Sectile. Unable to make sense of the jumbled fragments, they were stored away and forgotten. That is, until Frankie Snyder arrived. She unlocked the secrets of Herod the Great and revealed the stunning patterns of the floors of the Temple Mount. We modeled the entire thing, and for the first time ever, we can now see the majesty Jesus saw over 2,000 years ago. First off, what is Opus Sectile? Latin for cut work, it's the ancient Roman art of crafting intricate floor patterns from polished stone tiles. These luxurious floors became the ultimate symbol of prestige, adorning floors in cities like Rome, Pompeii, and Herculaneum. Herod the Great introduced Opus Sectile to Judea, incorporating it into his many palaces and the Temple Mount. The process of creating these striking tiles was a marvel of ancient technology.
They would actually be cut with a saw. You would use a certain type of sand in order to cut. And depending on your material, they would say, well, if it was sandstone, you went to this beach in India to get the right kind of sand. And if you're working with marble, you went to this beach in this other country. And the iron saw actually would not be doing cutting. Rather, the iron saw was moving the sand back and forth in order to cut the tiles, much like your diamond bits do today.
According to Josephus, an ancient historian, these specially cut tiles created dazzling patterns that decorated the covered porches of the Temple Mount. But what did these patterns actually look like? And what can they reveal about the temple Jesus knew? Soon after starting with the sifting project, Snyder encountered these mysterious tiles. She was immediately fascinated.
I asked the archaeologist one day, is anybody looking at these tiles and trying to recreate what the floors look like? And she said, no, right now we're just cataloging them. But if you'd like to try this, go ahead. And I said, well, yes, I have a degree in math. I really like geometry, so I'll give it a try.
Early research by Asaf Avraham had already identified several of the sifting project stones as Opus Sectile tiles. He proposed that Josephus, an eyewitness to Herod's temple, was likely referring to this stone style when he described the floors, paving the way for Snyder's discoveries. Through carefully measuring and cataloging each tile, she realized it could be possible to reverse engineer the patterns of the Temple Mount. But this was a monumental task. Luckily, Herod left clues. Snyder began a comprehensive study of all Opus Sectile floors built by Herod, like those in his palaces at Masada and Jericho. She then compared these findings to other Roman buildings of the period. From her research, she identified 5 key characteristics of Herodian tiles. First, each tile design was based on the Roman foot. Second, only geometric shapes like squares and triangles were used to create the various patterns. Third, contrasting colors were placed side by side.
This is black bitumen that was used for a lot of the tiles, and this is a mock-up of the pink limestone. Whenever you put two tiles together, you put contrasting colors side by side. You didn't put two tiles of the same color together.
Fourth, artisans modified popular Roman designs. And lastly, patterns were repeated over large areas. She also cataloged the type of stones Herod used, including local bitumen and limestone. But Herod spared no expense, importing exotic stones from places like Greece and Egypt.
Most of our stones, all the colored ones, are coming in from outside of the country.
Sadly, these lavish stones attracted salvagers, who pillaged the palaces after they were abandoned, leaving only fragments and plaster impressions as traces of the once stunning floor designs. Yet even these sparse remains held valuable evidence. See, to save costs, Herod's masons cut the imported tiles very thin, maximizing the number of tiles from each block, while local stones were left with a thicker depth.
So when you go and you find a floor and all that's there are tile impressions, if you see these deep cut V's down into the plaster, then you know it's either the bitumen or the limestone that was used there. But if you notice that it's very, very flat, then you know that it was an imported tile.
This clue, along with Herod's third characteristic of contrasting colors, told Snyder what shapes, patterns, and colors were used in the palace floors, even when nothing remained except for a few broken tiles. But Snyder's greatest discovery was the key that unlocked the entire puzzle. Nearly all Roman patterns used isosceles triangles with 45-degree top angles, but not Herod. He created a shape uniquely his, what Snyder calls Herod's Triangle.
It is a triangle that has the same height as its base. So it's like a triangle that is built inside of a square. It has angle measurements of 52, 64, and 64. It's just different from regular triangles.
This special triangle forced the surrounding tiles to also have unusual angles. The result, a completely unique floor plan. While an odd triangle might seem insignificant, it told Snyder the tile shapes and angles to look for in the sifting project. If she found a stone of the right material with these angles, then she knew it was Herodian. Now with this data, she could finally build the floor patterns that likely covered the Temple Mount. Of the tens of thousands of tiles that once decorated the Temple Mount, only about 100 have been recovered by the Temple Mount Sifting Project, identified by their unique shape, angle, and material. Although ancient salvagers had claimed most of the Herodian tiles, Snyder realized that the missing pieces could create a photographic negative of the designs. By taking patterns from Herod's palaces like the pinwheel and four-pointed star and accounting for the angles of Herod's triangle, she filled the gaps with corresponding tiles discovered in the sifting project. This led to these 7 patterns, which Snyder believes likely adorned Herod's Temple Mount. However, this pattern, the 8-pointed star, was special. Though common in Roman design, Herod again left his unique signature on it. But first, Snyder had a problem.
And we had one of these kites, and I had been looking at that thing for a couple of years going, what do I do with this kite-shaped tile?
Unable to find a home for this odd tile, she turned to solving Herod's 8-pointed star pattern.
And the way you generate this, I figured out, was you draw a square the size of your triangle, put a Herod's triangle, overlay them in each of the 4 directions. So 4 triangles, north, south, east, and west. When you do this, you can then draw a square right in the center. And then above, below, and on 4 sides, here you have 4 more Herod's triangles. And it turned out that once I figured out how to draw this star using 4 Herod's triangles, here sits the kite. It fit in absolutely perfectly.
This confirmed that the 8-pointed star was indeed a pattern on the Temple Mount. Using Snyder's 7 patterns and following her 5 characteristics of Herodian tiles, for the first time ever, we have brought the Temple Mount back to life. Glistening in the sunlight, these polished stones adorned the floors of the covered porches, the Royal Stoa, and even the temple itself. At the center of the large floor patterns, we placed Herod's most intricate design, the 8-pointed star. Simpler patterns like 4-pointed stars and pinwheels radiate outward, each measuring 1 Roman square foot. Finally, the border comes alive with contrasting foot-long Herodian triangles. Following Herod's 5th characteristic, the patterns seamlessly cover the expansive Temple Mount in magnificent fashion. These tiles witness some of the most pivotal events in the New Testament. Jesus walked these very floors as he taught his disciples, drove out the money changers in the Royal Stoa, and healed the blind and lame. Peter stood on them as he delivered his sermon following the miracle at the Beautiful Gate, and they bore silent witness to the temple's fall in 70 AD. You can't help but wonder, if these stones could speak, what marvelous stories would they tell?